This Saturday morning live, coming in from London. Christine Hart, private investigator, ex-journalist. I am your host, and my co-host is Brian Barrett, who author and spiritual coach. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Hi, how you doing? Hope
Yeah,
everything's well.
in London. Yes, yes, fine. I hope everything's well with you, Brian. Today we're going to talk about Lucy Letby, the serial killer of very young children, babies, in fact. I'm not going to go over the details of the crime because I'm sure that you've read them. It was absolutely horrific what has gone on. It's shocked the entire world. I am going to offer my experience and insight into these from my knowledge of Ian Brady and visiting and getting to know Ian Brady over a period of 20 years, and also the Hillside Strangler over a period of 4 years, far more recently. So I'm going to talk about that and talk about how it's given me insight into the Letby case. So I'll just go ahead with that, Brian. Shall I for a little bit, and then we'll
Yeah,
talk
that'd be
about.
good. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So why I probably became a private investigator when I was younger, straight out of care, was my father, my adoptive father, raped me, and my mother would whip me. So this is my adoptive parents. I was put back in care, and I always wondered what the energy was there, why they did that to me. I studied, became a private investigator, studied human evil, read a lot about psychopathy and this kind of thing, and didn't get any answers really. And I don't think that there is any answers in going down that road of someone's a psychopath, someone's a sadist, yada yada yada. They had a god complex. I don't think it didn't give me any answers as to why my father was like that and why my mother was like she was. And so I then wrote to Ian Brady, the Moors murderer. I was pretty young, 22 years of age, and he quickly invited me to come to see him. Um, the press got involved in that, made a bit of a pig's ear about it. I decided that I didn't want anything more to do with Ian Brady because he wasn't giving me any answers. It was almost like he was empty. It was almost like I wasn't meeting a serial killer, which is why I was there, really. When the press got involved, I then started to work in Fleet Street. I dated the journalist who wrote about me, Phil Hall, and joined Fleet Street actually, but still kept on as a private investigator on the side, but became a journalist. And I got to know Brady over a period, over a long, long period that I didn't want to, but the journalist that I was dating rather pushed me into it so he could do stories on Brady, and certainly he gave out information with a lot of stories in there. But I didn't want to because I thought I'm not getting what I want. I'm not seeing the monster. I'm not seeing the serial killer. I'm not seeing why he did it. It felt like it was very unfruitful. It was only after knowing him and meeting him 3 times, I slowly got to know him. He opened the furnace door, as he called it, and let me see inside. And I saw what I felt was a nest, an empty nest, where something otherworldly had lodged itself, but then had left him. And Brady spoke about him being in favor now, that when he would die, he would be risen up, and he was in credit because of the pain that he caused, the torturing, the bloodletting. And he told me there was always something within him that he called a face of death, um, that he realized he believed it was a god, and he believed that it was doing the will of this god. Some people might regard that as psychotic. I kept it on board. It was very interesting. Many years later, in 2009, I came across the Hillside Strangler on television, and the Hillside Strangler was speaking about, it's strange because there's something on YouTube where he switches, and this Steve character comes through him and starts talking about the murders and how girls don't matter, and how basically he floats around the ether. He hasn't got a body. Ken has got a body, and he does the killing just because he doesn't like girls. And I found this very, very interesting. I thought, there we have somebody that the monster part, this supernatural part that Brady had, but it just left a nest, an empty nest. But with Bianchi, it was still in him, but it was in the Steve part of him. So I began to write to Bianchi. I was told by the author Chris Berry I wouldn't hear back from him. I was told by other journalists I wouldn't hear back, but I did hear back pretty soon. Got a few letters, and then I was invited to go and see him pretty soon. I got The Guardian to pay for it. As a journalist. It ended up in readers' experience, bizarrely. The Guardian aren't very good to deal with. They are pretty not good, actually, for journalists. So then I got to know Bianchi for a long period of time. Now, Bianchi didn't immediately fess up Steve. A lot of people believe that Steve isn't real. It doesn't matter, though, whether Steve is real or not. What matters is, what is the part in him that was the killer? When I sat with him 2 days consecutively, I was very eager to encounter the killer, because I'd flown a long way. It's about 20 hours on the plane. I wasn't there to waste my time. He started to threaten me when he first came out. He said, you know, Chris Berry said this, that, and the other about me. I've never confessed to crimes. Chris Berry only met him for 2 minutes standing up. He didn't, I mean, that was it. He said to him, if you don't let me meet you, I won't give back paperwork I've got. So Bianchi said, fine, come to the prison. He said, you got 2 minutes with me, and you give me the paperwork back. So they had 2 minutes standing up with a guard present, and he passed the paperwork back, and Bianchi threatened him, and that was it. But then Chris Berry went on to say that Bianchi had talked about, oh, ha, 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 I murdered little girls. It was great fun, yada, yada. But Bianchi had been saying he was innocent from, I think, there was a confession to the police, but then after that he closed up again. And in the confession, he said he didn't know why he did it, and that he was sorry, and that it was said in a matter-of-fact way. It's quite bizarre, his confession. Again, it's on YouTube. And so I wanted to meet that part of him. So he came out threatening me, saying, are you in league with Chris Berry? I said, I don't even know him very well. I've only spoken to him about you. He said, you know, because if I ever get hold of him, I'm going to take him down. Do you know what take him down means? And I said, kill him, I'm guessing. And he said, yeah. And he was being a little bit like street kind of person, a little bit like Steve, the guy who confesses to killing and does it in a gangster-ish kind of way, you know, I'll go and take him down, you know, bitch, and this kind of talk. And so I thought, well, this is Steve, obviously, but it's not the killer. It's not the one that killed the girls. I just felt that intuitively. I do have a sharp sixth sense, and I felt slightly disappointed. I felt like I was being given some kind of floor show. And then we started to talk about Angelo Buono, and he's told me he'd sent Angelo Buono a birthday card. He tried to make friends with him. He started laughing about that and said, Hallmark don't do don't do a card for, oh, sorry, I fucked your life up. And then he said, oh, look at me, you know, who's that prisoner? What's he in for? Oh, yeah, robbery. Oh, the prisoner the other side, he's in for robbery. He held his hands out and he said, what does that make me, Chris? It was a joke about Jesus. And it was just around that time when I started to look at him and I started to pick up something that wasn't human, that felt like it wasn't human. It felt like it was millions of razor blades coming for me all at the same time. It felt like I felt like I wasn't top of the food chain. It felt like it was going to eat me, but in a weird way, like devour my soul. It was really, I had a feeling of freezing. I thought I was going to wet myself, or I thought I was going to pass out, and I wanted to run, but I couldn't run. I felt frozen. And this lasted for all of 2 seconds, where I felt it almost like it was trying to get inside my head. It was horrific. And he said to me, are you okay, Chris? You seem a bit, and as he said, are you okay? It snapped me out of it, and or snapped from feeling it, experiencing it, and it was back to talking to Bianchi. I found that interesting. I wrote the book In for the Kill on meeting Bianchi, and didn't put that in there actually. And then as I wrote it, sent it to Bianchi, and you know, he broke off contact with me. And then I started to experience this really strange things started to happen. I would be sitting with a good friend having coffee, and suddenly I would see that friend stretched out on a cross and looking at me and groaning and like beaten, and I would sort of go, whoa. And this friend was a good friend, so I said, God, I just had some weird kind of vision thing. And it started to happen quite a lot. And he said to me, oh, it's madness then. You've got to go and see a doctor. You know, you're going crazy. And I knew from the flavor of it, I started to, sometimes I'd be sitting watching TV or reading a book, and I would get these horrific visions. Some of them were in the desert of men buried up to their neck and their heads burning. But these horrific visions went on. They only happened for a fraction of a second, but they were bad. They were really bad. And so I knew that wasn't madness. I knew it was something else. So I went to a priest, Catholic priest. He told me about to pray. He said, just pray. So I started to pray when it happened. Whenever it would happen, I would just start praying straight away. And it wasn't working. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll try harder. And I really started connecting with Jesus, and I really prayed, Jesus, please come down. And somebody told me about the blood of Christ and pleading the blood. So I would imagine this blood covering these images. And that was it. It did it. It totally got rid of it, didn't come back until I had that experience. I invited Sheikh Ben Halima, as you know, on the show. Sheikh Ben Halima is somebody that casts out jinn. He told me to meet him in a dream. I met him in a dream, and he showed me a portal. I walked through the portal and entered this other world of the jinn. It was fairly interesting. But I made contact with my own jinn. When Kenneth Bianchi made contact with me again, he asked me, could he ring me? They now have JPay where you can email from prisons. So I was emailing. He then said he's allowed one phone call. He could phone me. Now, I didn't think he'd be able to ring a mobile. I mean, it must be expensive, but apparently he paid for it and spoke to me on my phone. Now, I was aware, he'd asked me to do video calls with me, but I was aware of this energy, and I thought, I don't really want that coming into my home.